to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not me.
Meg,
It's either Jim or I.
you have a copy?
Yeah, you brought a copy of it?
I don't know if I did or not. I can't remember anymore. To be completely honest.
The first item on the agenda is business on town property. This is our annual, we put out the request for applications, and usually we do it earlier than this. Last year we did it late. This year we're doing it late again. I think this is for business on town property, and I think what we need to do is come up with some, I don't know if we need, Steve, I don't know if guidelines is the word, but what procedure we're gonna use. So far, we've never had more than one type of specific business apply for it. But scuttlebutt is, there's gonna be a couple of applications for food trucks this year. There might be some different applications. So we have to decide is, you know, just because you were there last year doesn't guarantee that you're there this year. And we have criteria. Or are we gonna do an RFP, or how are we gonna do it?
Well, there was two bright line rules you guys established last year. One was no retail other than food.
Right.
And the other one was any food offer must have a brick and mortar on the island.
Or could we say
thought they had
preference was
preference.
given? I didn't think we said had to, but you maybe,
Okay,
you could
yeah.
check it.
Yeah, I thought it said
I
preference.
think it was preference was given because like Aaron
Preference.
didn't have a brick and mortar.
Right,
And that ended up getting approved.
right.
But I do think
There was no conflict.
preference, yeah.
No competition.
Yeah, so again, that's a bright line rule that you guys can change yearly. It's not codified. So however you wanna,
It says preference shall be given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you feel about, let's just say two people want the same spot? What about a lottery? Like if they're both, equivalent in a
bid.
or a bid?
yeah,
I would
request,
do a bid,
You do a bid more than a lottery?
yeah.
request for proposals and you go with the highest responsible bidder.
Right.
I think the obvious would be if we get food trucks,
Yeah,
one at Crescent Beach and one at Wades Beach.
right. And if we could work that out in a nice way, be good.
So then during the year, we also had some, I wanted to do for the fireworks. And we outright said no to that because it wasn't, the business, the way we've been doing the business on town property is for the season, not for an event.
But also that was very late.
It was very late.
I think we did kind of say, well, if you come for an event, at least come by the deadline. I think right?
It was only a week, maybe.
Or coordinate with the original
It was
event
only-
application as part of that application, because then it's all connected. You're applying for all of these things together, or at least at
That
the
can of
same
worms that
time.
we want.
I would open that can of
I mean-
worms. I don't know.
At the fireworks.
Well, the reason, it came up for the
Yeah.
fireworks, because you have a whole day of people on the beach, and they wanted to make sure there was enough food to go around because so many people were drinking. But then that needs to come as a complete, or simultaneously, like whoever's organizing the event needs to coordinate with whoever else wants to be there, but.
Well, it's a fundraiser.
Vendors,
Yeah, we do. That are
are
working
there.
all season.
right, then,
Given that it's a fundraiser, right?
What's a fundraiser?
It's a-
no, the event itself is,
Okay, all right.
no,
But I was just wondering if they need to raise money to have the fireworks, right?
right, but those are different events they do all over the
They
island.
only do that through the mail. They put, we contribute every year, but it's something you receive in your.
I think Salt also has it.
And so did,
And there are a couple of, but I was just wondering if you do what you're saying, to do it as a whole. So let's just say, it's Eccentric Bagel that would like to do this, that they would join forces with the fireworks, and the fireworks would collect, because it's part of what they're applying for, but they would collect a fee that would help them to offset their costs. In that way, I can see why you would say, yes, you should do it as a whole, as a unit.
Mhm.
In other words, you're kind of doing it like we do with the noise exception, that they have to donate X amount to the cause.
Yeah, but we wouldn't dictate
I
that.
understand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, I don't think we should
crazy about that.
get,
Yeah, I don't know, because then how would that work for,
Remember, last year, one of the businesses on Bridge Street wanted to do, they were a little concession. They were giving it away though.
One day, beer,
One
beer
day.
cart,
So that really wasn't a business.
right.
It was an opening. She was opening her business.
Right.
It was an event.
yeah, and I think the town would.
So that was more of an event.
Yeah, it more of an event. We should be supportive of that, people opening up new businesses, just trying to get a little jump start.
Right.
I think that's a, a good thing. We should be seen as a way, as a board that's pro new business, If we could just rein back into the question at hand, number one, do we have a due date where these applications for business on town
I
property?
would say the first week in, April.
the website says March 31st on the town clerk's page.
Right.
So,
That's only 3 weeks.
And you always can make the application, but it can be incomplete. So, because we're a little late, we can be a little lenient
Yeah.
with that. So get the paper in, the one form, and then all the other stuff you have to gather, well.
Because we haven't, I mean, it's on the town.
We're not late.
And-
we're not,
We're not late, but
Yeah.
But
we never,
you said we usually do an ad?
we usually talk about it.
Oh,
We do an ad for this?
No, you don't do an ad, it's just
oh, I thought you did.
website, fill out the application.
Basically, the businesses should know, but they usually need a little reminder.
Yeah, the ones who have been doing it definitely.
they know, and we've already started to receive
And
some
people who wanted
applications.
to do it last year
We're
were
told.
late, now know they have to do
Yeah,
it.
we were pretty adamant, yeah.
So I think we're good on the date. But I feel like another topic was also, we had like an outdoor assembly permit who wanted to bring a food truck for their event. Like, we need to consider that.
But that's not transient, that's not on town,
Well,
just
no,
transient
it
business
was-
in general.
It was somebody who was going to Wade's Beach last year.
Right, yeah. It was on
Right.
property.
Well,
If it was
I
on,
don't know what the party was.
Yeah.
isn't that similar to the fireworks, where there was an afternoon party type of thing, they were setting up, for food under the gazebo type of
yeah,
thing.
I did that one year, but, we just did it ourselves.
Right. I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, that was catering, that wasn't,
Yeah, yeah,
retail,
yeah,
for sale.
True,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's just another instance where
I think the issue with that one was that it was during
beach.
Yeah, right.
right.
during the summer, and then you take up
Oh,
parking spots and.
Correct. Yeah, I think you're 100% correct on that. It wasn't in September, October where, the crowd is not there. It was during, I was concerned about that.
right, the Around the Island race, I wonder if they're gonna come back. Was it for that?
No,
It's just a private wedding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, just a private party, it wasn't even a wedding.
There was also like a party where Tom and Lisa played music,
That's what
and
it
it was sort of a quasi-town sponsored through the
Yes.
rec
Yes.
department, maybe.
Oh, I think.
That,
Yeah.
that I think had food associated with it, maybe a food truck or,
Ice cream truck.
yeah, something.
Oh, so we're trying to say that these one-off things shouldn't be dismissed out of hand.
I'm thinking
That's what you're saying?
We have the subcommittee for outdoor assembly
Mhm.
permits. Should that group be tasked with looking at dovetailing those stipulations with
Right.
commercial, business on town property and come back and say, let's do it this way, lottery or bid?
Mhm.
And, I mean, we've had a lot of questions, I mean, unless we're gonna sit
Right.
here.
I'm not sure how the bids would work.
I think it costs
How would-
chaos when.
Well, I wouldn't do it unless there was competition. In other words, do
Right.
the regular process, then if we had two applicants for
And
the
just
same
same
spot.
spots for proposal,
Right.
not a formal bidding process. And then they, articulate what they want to do. They articulate whether or not they have a brick and mortar, what their past experience is, their financial capacity, and how much they're willing to pay to have their.
Well, they're doing all of that in the original application, except for the last part, how much they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
So that would be the addendum we'd send if we get two,
Yeah, there's that, and then also the past history with the municipality is something else that's
Yeah,
taken.
the past history counts for something, if they've had no incidents and, they've been decently cleaned up the beach after, that goes to the non-food kind of stuff.
Right.
That they cleaned up after themselves and everything, that should count for something. What happens if you have, with food though, you have one brick and mortar and one not? both put in one was there, let's say the brick and mortar had been there, for several years. Now somebody who's non-brick and mortar comes in, makes an application, and they outbid
Yeah.
the brick and mortar. How does that?
I don't think they could. I think we'd have to give it to the brick and mortar.
Because we've said that's our preference.
Because that's
the
part of the
priority.
criteria.
Yeah.
That's your preference.
And if we have another location that we could
Right.
offer,
Well, I think we have to
Together.
clearly have that in writing, that this is the pecking, these are the requirements, this supersedes that.
It says preference is given to brick and mortar.
It will be in the request for proposals.
Okay.
Brick and mortar will have priority.
We wouldn't
Get
go
that
to
far.
that
Yeah,
wouldn't get there.
place until.
Right.
Correct, unless, yeah.
it's just competition.
And we did have like a couple boat launch people a number of years ago. I'm trying to remember how.
Well, they want to do different things. They want to.
No, they
do,
wanted the launch service down there. There were 2 launch services down at Crescent Beach.
I think one of them ended up pulling out, yeah.
One, yeah, exactly.
their
That's
application.
Exactly correct. One of them voluntarily pulled out of it, so it saved us the.
I feel like, because there was something, I just don't recall. Decide on it.
Okay. All right, so are we sending reminders to the businesses or are they on their own? Send reminders.
I don't think there's that many of them that we shouldn't, I think, yeah.
Well, I mean, the other thing
Years
is,
of,
yeah,
consistent.
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Do we want to put limits on how many businesses we have on the beaches? I mean, because some of, like,
Yeah.
Crescent Beach can get really busy.
Yeah.
And it,
And parking is already at a premium on many,
Yeah.
many days.
Yeah, the number 4 has always been adhered to down at Crescent Beach, the number 4. And that counted, the launch was 1, the surfboard, the boards were 2, the
Right.
massage was 3, and the food truck was 4.
Right.
That has been the traditional 4 down at Crescent Beach.
okay.
We haven't, as I.
We've been over that.
I'm sorry?
We've had more than 4.
Oh, we have,
They
okay.
had the ice pop.
The
But that was supposed to be transient.
That was transient, that wasn't supposed to be permanently fixed there. Talking about people that they were supposed to come and go between there and Wade's Beach, back and forth.
Springer.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. That was transient.
But
Yeah.
then we also have the ice cream truck that came last year.
Right.
He's also around the island, but then as soon as they park at a beach,
We kick,
they
we
were,
push, we
they were
shoot.
in violation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was my impression that he was going to submit an application.
Yes.
So Chief, do you have a number of businesses you feel comfortable with based on parking and crowding?
Yeah, I'm with Councilman Colligan, just slightly off. I thought we were at 5 maximum there. And I definitely recall 2 boat launches at the same time there where we had one was more of a taxi service to Greenport. And he came in and addressed the board.
Yeah.
Right? And
Right.
so.
Like 3 years ago.
We may have a request for another launch this year. We have the request sitting for the taxi service. We may have a request for an ice cream truck, which could be transient, but might want a spot. So, I mean, I just really feel that some general policy guidelines would help, would help a lot. And then that we stick to them because, we're all hometown people here and somebody comes in 30 days after the application deadline because they weren't aware of it. And we always make concessions. We always work around it. And in a lot of cases, it's the right thing to do, but it's getting more difficult is what I would say for us to do that. I think we have to kind of establish some policy, try to stick to the policy and move forward.
As far as something like the ice cream truck, I'd be more lenient with Wade's Beach than Crescent Beach, simply, of course, the parking is not an issue. Plus, there's no duplication of services. So at Wade's Beach, there's nobody selling food there that you're in competition with. At Crescent Beach, you have a business right across the street that's serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have the food truck that's down near the bathroom. You have, there's other competition, and even down the other end of the beach. So I'd be more,
We did hear from the ice cream businesses last year that they didn't think it was right that the truck should be parked at the beach, ice cream truck.
Right.
Or, taxpayers.
Right, no, so I'm taking up parking spaces of people, they're a premium. I'm more for if it's an ice cream truck that you work the neighborhood, you go through
Yeah.
neighborhoods. And if you need to go over to a beach, that Wade's Beach Food has no other food service available. It might be a nice thing if you want to part-time spend an hour there, then go to a neighborhood and come back for a half hour, an hour, and then go to another neighborhood.
Yeah.
Then you're not in competition with what we have established. I'm with Jim about, no more than, the 5 that we have down there. Otherwise, it becomes, we're losing control of the beach down there, I think.
Are we
so I was
specifying? Go ahead, Jim.
Kind of in agreement with Councilman Brock Williams in that I think we should maybe put some draft thoughts together on paper and then come back to discuss those. Because one of the things is, okay, we cap it at 5, and then is it first come, first serve? If the last year, yeah, I mean, I can come up with 1,000 questions that I think we put down. Like, if you were a business there last year, do you have first right this year? Like, there's all those little things I think that we have to probably work out in a collective,
Yeah.
possibly
It's not a bit-
committee, and come back with 80%, 85% done, and get the
Yeah.
board approval on going forward.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Because you say 5 is a limit, well, what, do we want to specify what those 5 can be? Is it 2 launches, 1 food, or do we want to say 5, just 5?
Yeah.
So that would be another question.
Well, I was gonna say, because they all take different space on
Yeah,
the beach.
exactly.
You have 2 that are located on the beach itself. You have 1 located in the water but has a launch site. You have the food trucks taking up parking spaces. So, if you just say 5 businesses, you've got 5 food trucks
Different.
taking up 10 parking spots. That's a significant problem.
Yeah.
Because parking's at a premium. So we kind of have to, I think, come up with something more structured on how we do the approvals.
The thing that I agree with Jim is that if the only thing that would be duplicated is 2 different types of launch services, one launch service that services boats coming into the restaurant or into the beach area, another one, if at all possible, is connecting Crescent Beach with Greenport or some other kind of, I don't like to see things in competition with one another at at that area. I don't think we should ever have, 2 different massage competing against one. It's just, there's not that much of a demand for that there. It's a nice service. Let's not put people in competition with one another. The other thing is, Jim, I think we develop an SOP that says that we'll send out the reminders not later than February 28th every year to the people that have applied in recent years. Maybe take a 3-year back if you've made an application. Here's your reminder. It's due by not later than 31 March of that year. And then if you say, is it first come, first serve? Well, people that meet the deadline, it should be considered. If you're still chasing a person around in mid-April, end of April or May, because they decided to put in a month later, well, that's why we send out the reminder to everybody. And,
I think it should just be a notice in the paper.
Yeah, maybe a notice,
That's
okay.
Because
Notice
by
in the
sending
paper.
out reminders to selective businesses, I don't think that's
Okay.
appropriate. So,
Good idea. I like
put it on Facebook, put it in the paper, you've noticed.
Yeah, notice in the papers.
And as far as first come, first serve, that's be unfair as well, if you have a deadline.
No, we have a deadline,
Then-
exactly.
So at that point, we just go based on the type of business, and if there's competing applications, then, you basically do an internal RFP between those 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's common sense, because somebody be waiting there March 1st to put it in, and somebody else March 31st. Hey, they both got to be considered equally.
Right.
You're within the window.
Then we'd start getting April 1st applications for 2024.
You start sleeping.
Exactly.
You start sleeping
2
at
years
the
ago, we
door,
got them a year before.
ready to, when the door opens up at 9 o'clock, you'd be the first one in the clerk's office. Here's my letter, by the way. And I'm bound.
But
So we're gonna draft
So,
something?
and who's going to sit on this little ad hoc committee?
Well, we have the existing, I don't know if there's enough of a tie-in to sort of put it.
The outdoor assembly permits,
I don't think.
it's kind of a separate
Okay.
entity.
I just,
Darn.
on my plate.
All right.
Jack, do you want to say something?
the only thing I had was tie into Councilman Ianfola's point about how many businesses. So look, there is some logic to a very small square footage, if you want to call it that, because we're really talking about square footage space. So if you had
Yeah.
too small, and I don't know what that means, versus, and there were 4 larger, so the 2 small equal 1 large, and you have 5 businesses. But in tying that conversation together, we have had trouble with businesses expanding down there. So I want to this year and possibly have Public Works Commissioner stake out the location. This is roughly the location. 1 tent means 1 tent. And we go from there, because that growth has come back to bite us a little bit, and our working with and understanding sometimes comes back to bite us. So I do think there could be slight flexibility if we're talking about 5 businesses. Yeah, if we ended up with 4 decent size and 2 small, we could probably accommodate that in that same footprint, because it really takes up no more. But that's where we could be flexible, but not on the application should clearly spell out the location and how much capacity we're giving them at that location and no more.
Well, good ideas. Yeah. Square footage is
All right, so do we have a volunteer to join that committee? Because I think the chief should be involved.
Hate that committee.
No, I think we should have like a working group.
That's what I'm saying.
Working group with the chief, myself. Is there any town board volunteers for that?
I will.
DJ?
Yes, I will.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I didn't mean to sound so.
You got that comment.
I'll hesitantly do, but I have a lot.
Jim, DJ, the chief, and Amber?
Brian.
Brian.
You're talking Amber Wilson?
Yes.
Yes.
I knew that one was for me, so
Just checking.
So,
Okay,
so Stephen, not to put it on you, are you chairing that?
well, it's a working group, so yeah, we
I
don't
know.
really. But I'll take.
Well, come with an outline, that's
I'll
really,
take the lead,
that's what we
and,
need.
we'll set up a time and meet, and then we'll have these rules ready to be discussed for the town board.
Yeah.
Near future.
Well, good ideas.
Yes, in the very near.
Right.
To say near
next
rather than
week.
farther.
yeah, like next week is right.
There you go.
Let's not drag this out.
I'm available tomorrow if you guys want.
Yeah, 11 o'clock just cleared up for me.
Yeah, so you want to do
Yeah.
11 o'clock tomorrow?
Yeah,
Steve,
definitely.
you available?
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I probably would have to go to there's an East End Chiefs meeting in East Hampton Village where the 10 East End Chiefs meet quarterly. So that's at 10 o'clock in East Hampton Village. So
Okay.
I could be back.
What about 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock's great.
2's okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's tomorrow, right?
yeah.
I'm just sending Brian a text.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be okay with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Get it out.
Oh, we did?
Wait, was it?
Town Hall?
Yes.
Okay, so that's to be continued. Okay, next on the list, we have pesticides and fertilizers. This is something we talk about and talk about and talk about. Stephen did some research and want to tell us what you found?
Yeah, so unfortunately, pursuant to New York State Environmental Conservation Law, Section 33-0303, the state has the exclusive jurisdiction over regulating fertilizers. Pesticides. Therefore, we cannot touch that subject. They occupy the field. There's a 1983 case that interpreted this authority, and it's a second department case, which is controlling for our area. And it's crystal clear. The opinion of the courts starts with, has the enactment of Article 33 of the Environmental Conservation Law preempted the field of pesticide regulation and thus precluded local governments from legislating in that area, ? Since we believe that it has, we conclude that the local law enacted by the Incorporated Village of Laurel Hollow prohibiting aerial spraying of pesticides was void and that it could be repealed. So it's, we cannot legislate in the area of pesticides.
And with that in mind, I took over this, and I gave everybody a copy of this. Worked on this over the weekend. What Stephen said is exactly correct. Our town code calls for the banning of, which is consistent with the New York State DEC, of those three substances, including the third one down, DDT, which, by the way, goes by a 30-letter word, if you can pronounce it, DDT. DDT was outlawed in the United States in 1972 and is still used in certain parts of the world. DDT persists for a long time in the environment and in animal tissues. It talks about the penalties if any of those three substances are used. I do want to read this. I said, note, pursuant to New York State Environmental Conservation Laws 33-0303, jurisdiction and all matters pertaining to the distribution, sale, use, and transportation of pesticides is by article vested exclusively in the commissioner. That's the Commissioner of Environmental Conservation. Therefore, unfortunately, we are precluded from legislating in this area. Important. Mr. Kiley spoke to the DEC last week, and I spoke to them, and it's all complaint driven. And with that in mind, I developed a kind of a game plan down below. I actually did call the DEC, spoke directly with we're in Region 1 of New York State. I did speak to the people yesterday. They were very helpful. I took some notes, and the notes are outlined here. What I was told to do is for a game plan education, instruct the CAC and probably the WAC, probably Green Options. If you could get the chair people and one representative of each one of those committees together, we could come up and put this educational piece together. It's important. She's willing, they have programs developed already, actually video programs that we could play on Channel 22 about pesticide use. They have all kinds of materials. So when we get to the Green Options Fair, we should be able to speak to that in depth. We also, the CAC was starting to write articles every 3 months, quarterly, in the Shelter Island Reporter based on, environmental issues. So this would be one that we would kind of capitalize on. It said other efforts that Jerry, you talked about this one, getting neighborhood associations involved in the effort to help within their own neighborhoods, bringing it up this summer at neighborhood association meetings where you have a captive audience. Like in Silver Beach, we get 70 people, 75 people for an annual meeting. You can get the information out, get the word out, also with some materials. Green Options Committee, obviously at their fair, reaching out to local landscapers about pesticide use. Interesting enough, Bo Payne was at the meeting last night of the WMAC. He is a pesticide control person, so he actually has the license. And he said the license is and the education is very, very strict. Yeah. Really strict. So it has to be maintained. Are there people on the island that you can presume that are applying pesticides without duly being licensed? Probably yes. So there's a mechanism to go about that here. The new theme, respect our environment, ROW. I just came up with that acronym about respecting our environment. Complaints. Can I?
Yes. Maybe there is where it belonged, but remember last week we had the poster, how to dispose properly of your medicines?
Yes.
I'm wondering if we couldn't go back to the well there.
Yeah.
And ask Adam Hoshagen for, a size poster that could get posted in a lot of different areas on Shelter Island with some of this information.
Mm-hmm.
The phone numbers to call, and then maybe even to design the pamphlet so that it's done,
Okay, all right. And we'll look into that. Yeah. So complaints, neighbor to neighbor, obviously, a lot of problems can be solved neighbor to neighbor if you approach your neighbor in a nice way. Homeowner to landscaper or to the pesticide company that's applying that chemical. And you notice the trend today is especially tick driven. We used to spray for ticks, during the high season of May, June, July, August, September, maybe even in October. And now what they're really trying to sell you on is spraying for 12 months a year. The advertisement is ticks live really, with global warming, which is not as severe. Ticks are still around. So therefore, we're coming to your houses in December, January, and February and spraying like crazy to kill a few ticks. Is that really necessary? Really to be.
Well, we have to make a distinction too, Jim, what they're spraying.
Yes.
Because was speaking to Judith Lickmansky, who's with her husband, has a business. And she said, they're almost, not exclusively, but most of what they spray is cedar oil.
Okay.
So
Yeah, there are a lot of safe products. And
Lots of safe products.
There are a lot of safe products.
we can't just,
And
that's,
by the way, one of the things about the products, I'm talking to the lady from the DEC, every different product has the regulation right on it. Temperature, wind, when to apply, when you can't apply, it has all of that right there. So obviously checking the product and making sure that it's applied properly is key. If you witness a violation for the environmental conservation, she said, you are our eyes and ears. Every one of these, it says here, there are more than 300 environmental conservation police officers in all of New York State, each patrolling 400 square miles. You can be helped by reporting every environmental conservation law violation that you observed or suspect. To ensure a proper response to your complaint, please be prepared to provide detailed information when reporting a violation of the law. Here's the number, 1844 DEC ECOS, which is basically 1-844-332-3268. And I'll get this out to the papers so that you'll have this, to report any types of infractions. Pesticide enforcement policy, the purpose, gives you the purpose there, the background information, and basically the enforcement piece. There are three objectives that the New York State DEC is trying to accomplish. First one is demand strict compliance, and they take their business very seriously. Establish an enforcement presence, and I give you a background on that as well. And objective number 3 is be consistent in imposing sanctions for non-compliance. And the penalties that you cited, Stephen, are correct. Some of them, first offense is so-so, and then, but the second or third offense obviously gets more and more strict. The last thing I have up there is the people that you can actually contact here in Region 1. So Joe Catrone specializes in pesticide issues. That's his number. Joyce actually is the supervisor, and that's her number. So I spoke to Joyce. I left a message for Joe, but I spoke directly to Joyce Rodler. And in here, I gave her the 3 concerns that we were most concerned about from the Bayman. Number 1 is spraying in close proximity to wetlands and other water bodies. Number 2, spraying when winds are in excess of 20 miles an hour. Number 3, weather forecasts that call for moderate to heavy rain following the spraying of pesticides. These are 3 concerns that our Baymen have delivered to us on the town board as 3 major concerns that they have. Again, I talked to Tommy Field last night. I said, Tom, next time you're out there and you witness something, have a cell phone with you. Here's the number, have the number in your wallet. Be able to report that immediately and give as much information as you possibly can. They will dispatch a person immediately to follow up on that investigation. Again, it talks about labels. The big thing that she emphasized, the last 2 things, the RX is education and outreach. So we need to work on our education and outreach. And I think those 3 committees that I mentioned before are prime for this. And the last thing is CCE, that's the Cornell Cooperative Extension, and the DEC work very closely together in formulating new educational programs for public consumption, and they have them available. We have Mark Capolino that works there for the CCE. He produces these kinds of materials all the time. So if we have an in right there at CCE, if we have a particular program that we'd like the public to see, we want to put it up on Channel 22, Mark would be a good person to be able to bring in a product that you could share with the children in the community.
okay.
Right, that's pretty much it.
So how do we move this forward? I can bring to WAC,
I'm going to, next week, bring it to the CAC,
right, and get the person,
yes,
the volunteer.
and bring it to Green Options. So we're looking, do we want it just one person per committee, or want the,
Well,
The
I
chairperson.
wanted to, I say the more the merrier.
all right, so.
I think that there's a lot of assignments in here.
Okay, let's try to shoot for the chairperson and 1 committee member. That'll give us 6, all right? And then, we can take a liaison or 2 to work on that. Get a committee of 7 people together.
Jim, would a DEC officer come out and give a presentation?
Sure. Oh, sure. I'm sure I have her number. She said, she was so very nice. I mean, she offered, the reason being is they are total, the number of times that they come upon something is small compared to the number of referrals. They are very dependent on people picking up the phone, calling this hotline, so to speak, and reporting this incident immediately. They guarantee you that they will bring out an investigator to follow up on every single report, as long as it's legitimate and the person is identified, and they have sufficient information.
So I'm the 23rd of March, so I just would like to, also put it right away, Christina, on the next work session where all three of us, where we've all had a chance to, we don't have to wait for a meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can just email our committees
Right.
and see what they come back
Okay,
with, see who
okay.
volunteers from the committee.
Because it would be nice if we could just have the follow through here.
I have options next week.
Yeah.
16th is
Okay.
the meeting.
16th, I could email, so maybe we can discuss it on the 21st or the 28th.
Yeah,
21st is a town board meeting. Why don't we say that we put it on the work session for the 28th? And try to have our volunteers here.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I would follow through on this is, as Stephen was 100% correct on, but I didn't want to give the message to the community that we couldn't do something, because we can, and that's what we're here for. Now, if we're not going to coordinate it, nobody's going to coordinate that effort. So I think that I wanted to make it very clear that this is an issue that, if we're serious about protecting the environment, first thing we're looking at is pesticides. The next issue would be, fertilizers and other things, other concerns that we have. But pesticides have been brought to this body by our fishermen and our shellfishermen over and over and over again. We need to respond to their needs, so.
And it's also in the ground and surface water management.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's no question. And I want to say the fertilizer thing is not that we're not doing. I mean, WAC is on it.
Okay.
And it is a complicated topic, but that being said, they're working on it. And Lisa was away. She's the one spearheading it. We should have more by the end of this month on that, on, just some steps forward, some suggestions, all of that.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing really if we're gonna try to enforce this, is public awareness and dropping a dime.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, there are regulations in place that you're not allowed to spray if the wind is over, I think it's like 10 to 12 miles an hour. And it's known for a fact that the sprayers come to Shelter Island when it's too windy to blow on the north and south, because they can't, nobody's here to enforce it.
And just how you put that, Jerry, I'm not picking on you, just drop a dime. Well, I think what we all have to think about is, I'm not tattling. I'm protecting my health,
Right,
and the health of my family.
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to be that person.
Right.
But I really don't want to drink your poison.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, all right, I recognize you're right, but also you have to,
Well, no, they have a right, but not
to,
break the law.
right.
That's why the educational piece is so
Yeah.
important, because I think people that come out here, people that live out here are very attached to the environment. People that come out, that's 75% of our population during the high season. It's not from not wanting to do the right thing. It's not knowing what the right thing to
Right.
do.
Exactly.
It's educating about,
Yes.
you need to be invested here.
Yeah.
This is your property, this is our land, this is our island, this is our water supply. So I think people will receive this very, very well. It's not like government jamming
Right.
something down your throat. No, this is an investment in your home and your environment, your water system.
No, the town board should be commended here, because the easiest answer in government, it's not within my jurisdiction, and move on. So it's good to really take this on and use it as an educational opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have large homes. What this is about is the special permits that come before the town board for houses above 599,000 square feet. And since I've been here, it's like we use the Harris property on bootleggers as like the Bible. Well, he had to do this, well, he had to do that. And he did, they were very cooperative with what the board asked them to do. But I think we need to have some guidelines in place, and I think we need to know, what it is we're looking for. And I think we need to get it on, on paper, not just, well, this is what we did there, this is what we did there. Just like we have criteria for a lot of other things, I think we need specific.
The increase in the number of applications we've gotten recently, like in the past, I was looking back, and it was only like maybe 1-2 applications max per year for homes exceeding the 6,000 square feet. And we have 4 right now pending, and we've received them in the last few months, so it's an increase in that demand.
Right, well, let's talk about it in the context of housing. I mean, housing is not just one end of the market. If this trend continues, this island's vastly different, more so than if we build 10 affordable rental units. This, I believe, has a bigger impact on the quality of life here in many ways. Quality and content, or it's a different word than quality, as opposed to, yes, there could be some environmental degradation, but really what I'm talking about is the kind of community that we have here. And I think that we need to really think now. Part of what that list that I think that should be codified. I think there's no more, you get an extra, 4,000 square feet because you did these mitigations. Those mitigations should become expectations at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that there's going to be very little allowance of above 6,000 square feet. That would be my, just reworking this, revamping this so that we actually have a limit that people know is a limit.
Yeah. I also think that everybody, architects, builders, and future buyers here to the island, have it figured out. It's figured out to the point that, and we'll get back to, ask for more than you need. So if you only need 8 or 9 bedrooms, ask for 11 or 12. If you only need 8 bathrooms, ask for 11 or 12. Because then when you come in before the board and you demonstrate the fact that, all right, maybe I can convince my client to, scale it down. It's a game. It's almost like a card game where it's just a kind of, we don't really need that. The other thing is the point that you brought up about, I'll put in the IA system. I'll put in the cistern. I'll put in this. I'll put in the full pool cover. They have that based on the Harris application with the 13 different things they quickly agreed to. Everybody knows that. So they come in with that saying, you know what, my client's willing to do this, that, and the other thing. And it has become, they have figured out how to beat the system and still come across as somebody who, fair. I'm really, by the way, I'm actually doing you a favor.
Right, well,
That's that last presentation that we had here a couple months back when I kind of.
the threat of by right, I could have 4 6,000.
It was an insult to us, and I don't say that often, but it was an insult the way he talked down to the people here on the town board, saying, I'm doing you a favor. Well, if do me a favor, go down to 5,999 square feet, and then we'll talk favor. But I think there's an overwhelming demand in the public about this issue. When is the town board going to say no to these large houses? And the next thing that they say to you is, we don't want to become the Hamptons. Well, if you're not willing to do this, you will be, as Jerry just said, you will slowly but surely, for this year, it was 5 years ago, 2 years down the road, it's going to be 6 or 8 of them. The trend is only getting bigger. It'll be very similar to Dune Road. You won't have a school district. You won't have a volunteer fire department. You won't have a lot of these things that people became very comfortable with here on Shelter Island.
Well,
You'll never get it back.
Right. I mean, I think my biggest issue with the special permit process as it stands now is actually a little more fundamental than that even. I think it comes down to how we calculate square footage in the application.
Yes.
And that's kind of the root of the problem that's actually causing additional problems later on down the road.
How would you, or what would you think?
Well, so for example, when we calculate square footage, we're calculating it as conditioned living space is what counts towards your special permit application. I think it should be all interior square footage, maybe with an exemption for a mechanical room of a reasonable size. But then if you go through.
So you're saying basement too?
Yes, any space that could be finished and lived in at some point in the future.
Okay.
So space within your foundations. And the reason I say that is because what's happening is you have people who apply, for a home that if you were to do the interior calculations, it would be over 6,000 square feet. But they choose to not finish a certain amount of space to keep it under that requirement. And then what happens is after the special permit has been issued, then they go and finish the space later without a permit. So now you have a new owner. We've seen this happen time and time again. Now, if the special permit is for the entire interior square footage, finished or unfinished, then that is what that special permit is permitting, that square footage. So once you have that square footage permitted, like you have approval to build that square footage on the property, finished or unfinished, let's say you choose not to finish your basement. Then when you go and you decide, or a new homeowner decides, you transfer the property and the new owner says, hey, I want to finish this basement. You're not going outside that footage. You got that square footage in your original permit. So now you go to the building department and say, hey, building department, I need a building permit to finish this basement that I had permitted originally. Now you don't have this complication of needing an additional or another special permit to finish the basement that was square footage was already permitted for. I think the reason people avoid doing the construction legally is because they're trying to avoid that whole special permit process.
Right.
If you deal with that in the beginning, then when they go to hopefully do the construction to finish something later, they will hopefully do it correctly and you will have proper egress. You will have appropriate construction because it's not as onerous to get that permit.
So see, when you mentioned this.
You have all the big asks up front.
Yeah.
You know, when you're doing the primary construction, this is the well requirement. This is the sanitary expectation. This is how your drainage should be handled. This is what your irrigation should look like. Because that's all the initial construction stuff. People don't want to have to come back in 5 years to finish a room.
But you're gonna-
And be told, hey, no, now you got to go do these upgrades.
So you're basing, so there's two things here. You're saying your permit will be based on potentials, right?
Yep.
Potentials, okay. And part of me wants to say, well, why even have a special, I mean, yes, there can be a special permit process, but I think it should be considered a dead end most of the time. Like, we're going to say, maybe it's not 6,000 square feet because you're now including all, maybe we're going to say it's 7,500. I don't know what the number is. But to also say,
To revamp sort of the process, because I feel like the process is broken.
Yeah, and do we include that if we do have a max or a new max, old max, whatever, and it's all space addition, not all potentials? Do we then say, but that includes all the structures?
Yes.
You know?
Because what's happening is you have someone who constructs a house that's 5,000 square feet and a barn that's 3,000 square feet, but they choose not to condition the barn. But that's a significant foundation. That's a significant ask of the land. It's a significant impact. And it's not counted as a special permit because it's not conditioned space. So I think that kind of, and then, so for example, now if someone were to go and try to finish that structure, they'd have to come back for another special permit.
Yeah.
So what's the incentive to do it legally? And I feel like it opens the door for more people to do things outside of the code
Right.
by making it too arduous for them to do it correctly.
And it makes a mockery of the code.
So this is
But that's just my,
Before we get into the legal end, Amber and I had met with Joe this morning. He had some other concerns. Joe, just things we should be thinking about.
My concerns, my input really pertains exclusively to the use of water and the evaluation of not just these types of permits, but in general permits for, different types of development on properties. I'm seeing an increased reliance and sort of a standard being set for cistern use, minimized well outputs. And what I would like to see in this process is a decreased reliance on trucked in water and an expanded examination of what these parcels can provide on their own based off of the hydrogeography at that site. Is there substantial aquifer depth and quality to support the intended use? I see a lot of properties in places that have substantial aquifer depth and good access to water that are being forced to put in small, undersized pumps for their use with on-site storage and cisterns for other non-essential uses like freshwater supply at docks, refilling of pools. And my understanding was cisterns were really introduced to the island to help combat the irrigation law that was put in, but I have a growing concern about the need for trucking in water for other non-essential uses. It seems to be a standard in these applications. And the trend that we're seeing in our neighboring communities like Southold, Riverhead, East Hampton, and Southampton is that they're dealing with their own water issues now. Suffolk Water Authority has asked municipalities that they serve to implement mandatory irrigation restrictions during the summer period. So that includes East Hampton, Southampton, and Southold. And Riverhead, which operates their own water district, has before their own board a substantial irrigation and water conservation requirements that they're looking to pass as well. It's irresponsible and unsustainable for our community to outsource these problems, specifically for non-essential water use, to our neighbors. I think in the not too distant future, our neighbors are going to probably put the kibosh on sending us water when they're dealing with their own imposed restrictions. That being said, I think the most sustainable approach is to consider a parcel's given water access for its intended uses. There are some parcels that just cannot supply their own water to fill things like a pool. And perhaps as part of this permit evaluation process, those properties should not get pools. And other properties that have adequate water supply and can demonstrate so scientifically should not have such harsh restrictions imposed on their own usage. They should not be burdened with buying trucked in water to wash their boat off at their dock if they can do it on their own. I think this is a great opportunity to engage some of our other committees like the WAC to review policy changes about rain capture systems and see if there's a way that we could take a more holistic approach towards these development projects and not just lean on what I would consider a totally unsustainable practice of growing need for trucked in water. Trucked in water is expensive. It's not fair to our neighbors who are dealing with their own water shortage. It's damaging our roads. It's clogging up ferry lines, and it's growing. The number of trucks traveling each day to the island is growing significantly from when these policies were first implemented, and that's a troubling trend.
Those are all
great points.
yeah, very good points.
A lot can be done with recapture, like roof runoff being directed into dry wells and not dry wells, but cisterns instead of dry wells. And then there's a lot of potential.
It's an interesting concept, Joe, to take a look at each parcel differently and be able to try to project whether you're capable of sustaining what you've got or putting in a new pool, whether your property can generate that kind of water to be able to do that. That's kind of an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah,
So-
look, if we're tasked with making sure we have responsible development, responsible construction, then I think the only real approach here is to make sure you've got sustainable development on a property that can supply the resources that they're requesting to install. If you've got a pool, you should be able to supply your own water for your pool. You can't be relying on your neighbors to fill it up. And there are technical engineering and hydrogeographic methods to quantify this. This is not, the burden shouldn't be on a board full of volunteers to make that determination. We can make standards so that designers can help their clients understand what they can do with their property and what they can't. And that will be better for the whole community.
All these comments are great, and they need to be wrapped into the comprehensive plan update, because zoning allows property owners to have permitted uses as of right. So like what you're talking about now is when you're asking for something above and beyond what is as of right, then these factors come into play. Or do you want to reevaluate the whole zoning code based on water supply, whatever? But that's the comprehensive plan. We're in the process of updating that right now. So what I would suggest to the town is, since we're doing that, you enact a moratorium on SFLA special permits. And right now, hit the pause button. Moratoriums are not statutory. They're a creature of case law, and they've been held up numerous times as a valid lease power and a valid land use power of municipalities. So we're allowed to do it. When I talk about moratorium, it's almost like you're in a relationship and you're on a break. Now you're looking at what's going on in your relationship, and is it good for both of us or it's not good for both of us? So can we do things better? So that's what I would recommend we do. It would be effective immediately. And typically the case law says that 6 months to a year is a reasonable time period. So long as you're actively pursuing an update to your comprehensive plan and actively pursuing an update to your zoning code. So I would think that the board, given from what I'm hearing, should seriously consider enacting a moratorium immediately on these big homes.
Stephen, how does that affect the applications before us now?
They would all be encumbered by the moratorium. All the processing of every large home application, for lack of a better term, would stop in its tracks while we evaluate and update the comprehensive plan.
That's a big step.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
Are we opening ourselves up to potential litigation?
Absolutely not. This is, again, something that has been time and time again validated as a tool a municipality could use, because as you're raising very valid concerns, and in the meantime, you're processing these applications and you're using standards that you feel are not appropriate or antiquated, meaning special permit. Maybe the comprehensive plan would say, hey, make it an area variance. Get it out of the town board doing a special permit, because special permit, the bar is a lot lower to meet, to get an approval versus an area variance, which is higher. So maybe you want to consider doing that. Consider outright prohibition on any house above, don't allow a special permit, or, but, these are things you can consider. And the only way you can consider it and do it in a way that because the cart would be before the horse, you haven't made a fully reasoned decision on what you want to do about these, and yet at the same time, you're reviewing them under standards that you and the community both feel aren't doing the right job. So
I just want to back up to one thing though. Let's take, for instance, the Oak Tree Lane. Construction's already begun. The foundations.
that's already been approved.
That's already been approved. Okay, so anything
that's totally different. Yeah.
and is in construction phase would not be impacted.
Yeah, so vested rights is basically, you got a building permit.
Right.
Shovel in the ground.
Yep.
And you expended substantial money.
Yep, towards that. You're vested.
You already have the permit.
That's still, you could be caught up in this.
I just wanted to-
Even if you have the building permit, if you have not put shovels in the ground, if you have not started building, you can get caught up in the moratorium.
Right. Okay.
Well, you should.
But it also,
If you don't have the permit.
no, but I'm saying you get the permit, it could be a year before you
When you
put
haven't done
shovels in.
anything.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, but you can write it in a way where the town board feels, if you got the building permit already, you're fine. So you can write it in that way.
Right.
But like case law says that they don't have a vested right until the building permit issued, shovels in the ground, and substantial money spent.
Okay.
So the only thing I would like to see is just how you did the timeframes with the comp plan and a few of our other projects. How we're gonna, just say, okay, we're gonna have a moratorium, forget about it. Let's have some concrete dates that we would like to.
It has to have a set date. It has to have a finish.
Yeah,
has to be
but even
finish line.
before the finish,
We need,
First of all,
It's comp
EJ
plan.
and I are meeting with,
comp plan, the consultants
week from tomorrow,
right,
next week.
next week.
next week.
So then we'll have more of a timeline, a set timeline on when we'll be hitting our big milestones.
And of course, this will be a
And
topic.
This will absolutely impact how the comp plan moves forward as far as, I think, the amount of public input that we're gonna get. So, we're gonna have a few large public meetings to talk about all these topics. So, we would our mission is to have this done by the end of the year, the latest. And I mean like signed off on, approved by the board, adopted by the end of the year is the goal. So when we meet with the comp plan consultants, we'll let them know that this is something that the board is talking about and what the timeline is so that we can create simultaneous timelines so we know. Because the way I see this is that we have to complete the comprehensive plan, adopt the comprehensive plan, and then we can move forward on making the changes necessary to resolve whatever it is we figure out is failing in this whole special permit process. So before we can actually end this moratorium, we would have to adopt the comprehensive plan and finalize the necessary changes.
It would be, obviously, when you take those three things into consideration, it's closer to the year than it is 6 months.
Right,
But 6 months from now only gets you through the fall.
right.
To actually get the plan approved and put into motion and everything, and to make the necessary changes,
Right.
it's gonna take you close to 12 months. It'll take you.
Process.
It's local law.
Okay, so we, at our next meeting, we'll schedule
Schedule
a
a public,
special, public hearing.
public hearing.
By the way, this will be an interesting
This
thing
is
for
gonna
the,
move that fast, I imagine, for
Now,
the people running for public office, and 60% of the board might change. It's gonna be 40 to 60%, depending on how that vote goes. But a substantial change to the board. It's gonna be interesting, and it's gonna be a debatable topic. These are the kinds of issues, though, that people need to sink their teeth into that are running for office, that they gotta be serious and accountable before I cast my vote for somebody, that which way they're going with some of these issues. I think that's
I want to make sure that we have an achievable, realistic timeline
Yeah.
so that anybody who does get caught up in this knows
Yeah.
that there's an end date.
yes, yeah.
I also want to really define what it is that we're hoping to accomplish with this, what we're finding as problems in the process, because if that's not clearly defined,
Right.
then how do we know when we're done, when we've solved the problem?
Yeah.
And then, I want to make sure that, does this have to go to the county, to the state for approval?
It's referred to the county,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and then they, just 9 times out of 10, they say it's.
It's usually considered a type 2.
And it's type 2 for sewer.
There's a
Right.
application that I started reading and decided.
Yes, I have it.
Which I just have to finish and haven't picked up since December. But it's Division of Local Government Services Land Use Moratorium. It's part of the government technical series, so I would recommend everybody.
You guys sent it to everybody.
Oh, and maybe that's where I got
Yeah.
it when I printed it. But, yeah, it has some good stuff, because going to the county planner.
Right.
Right, not being more than a year,
All right.
the rationale.
Okay, next on the agenda is,
Nothing like taking controversial topic one after another. Let's go from pesticides to large homes to ADUs. How to
ADUs.
make friends and influence people, right?
Stephen, you gave us a document,
Failing.
your revisions, I guess you call
Yeah,
it.
well, yeah, so we spoke about this several times. The town board, has made it clear that they want to open up ADUs as a viable community housing option and make it more robust. In order for us to do that, I believe a condition precedent is to take out accessory apartments from the rental law that allows accessory apartments to be used as a vacation rental for 14 days or less. I believe that you should revert back to the standards of an accessory apartment that's in zoning, that says accessory apartments must be for year-round occupancy. So it would be an easy fix within the rental law to just take out If you could see, we struck out the owner occupied premises, so that's AKA accessory apartment. So you take that out of there and you're done. Now you revert back to zoning, which is year-round occupancy. Now,
But you're leaving in, right?
yeah, so there's two other options for vacation rentals, the homesteader's hardship license and the commercial license. So you still have two opportunities to rent your house out as a vacation rental, but just not the owner occupancy.
Do we know if we have any commercial?
I know there's a few out there.
There are? Okay,
Yeah.
I just didn't know, actually.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Read the definitions, what a commercial rental is.
no, it is. No, listen, this is, the only amendment to this code I did was do the strike through. So the code in and of itself remains the same.
BJ, didn't we have that at 7 where there were 2 rooms designated in the?
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, rentals, and the rest of them were, I thought so.
Really?
Wasn't that, Christina?
When they built the building?
When they built 7, I remember several years ago when she was taking 2 rooms for rental purposes and the others.
Yeah,
No?
my recollection from when it went to ZBA was that there were 4 under the bed and breakfast law and then 2 were being
That's what I
rented
thought.
out
That-
under.
Under this,
That's what I thought, it was a mixture.
oh, that's interesting. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it was a very interesting use. of-
Workaround.
Yeah, zoning.
Okay, so the next step with this, Stephen?
The next step would just be setting it for a public hearing.
So it would keep the homesteader's hardship license intact, and it would allow commercial vacation rentals, but it wouldn't allow owner-occupied vacation rentals.
Correct.
So you couldn't move out of your house into your ADU and rent your house.
Correct. It would have to be for year-round occupancy. If you're living on the property and you have an accessory dwelling unit, you would have to rent that out as a year-round. If you went into the accessory apartment, rented out the house, year-round. If the property is owner-occupied. Now, if it's not owner-occupied, then you can avail yourself of the commercial license and rent it out as on Airbnb and do what you want. But we're trying to just get it back to ADUs how they were meant to be. And they were meant to be for year-round occupancy. And also, we're keeping in line with other surrounding municipalities. Southampton, Southold, you're only allowed to have an accessory apartment, not only for year-round occupancy, but it has to be to somebody who's on the community housing registry in both those municipalities. We're not there yet, but at least we're just saying that it has to be for year-round occupancy.
Stephen, I think you said it, but I just want to make sure. If I live in an accessory dwelling, I can rent out the main house?
Yes.
Year round?
For year-round, yes. Yes, so that's what we do. Now, also, I know there's been some concerns about, having these rental properties without inspections and whatever. So what I'm also recommending we do at 10510 in the law, this applies to, these are rental regulations generally. So they apply to plain vanilla rentals and vacation rentals. I'm recommending that we insert this provision that'll apply to every rental property. And it just say something like this: written certification from a licensed architect, licensed engineer, or licensed home inspector that states that the rental property fully complies with all of the provisions of the code of the town of Shelter Island and the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. The certification shall include but not be limited to the number of each bedrooms, the square footage of each bedroom, and a description of every improvement indicated on the survey. In lieu of the provision of such a certification, an inspection may be conducted by the enforcement authority, which would be the town, the building department and/or code enforcement. And in cases where questions or concerns exist regarding information presented with an application, the enforcement authority retains the right to require an inspection. So you give the homeowner an opportunity to avoid having the inspection by providing a certification from a licensed architect, engineer, or home inspector, or for free, because that costs money to do it. When I started in this business many moons ago, it was $750 for a certification. Now it's $3,500 for a certification.
Wow.
So it behooves you to do the inspection by the town because it's free. So I think that solved the problem that you guys are concerned about safety, ensuring safety of each and every one of these rental, and at the same time, trying to create more opportunities for community housings and ADUs. So that's what I would recommend we do, and we could set it for a public hearing at the next.
Okay, so let's all review this. Any discussion next week, then we'll get set to hearing.
I would like to know how many people are doing the owner occupied vacation rentals. Like, I want to see if the building department can give us a number on how many people
Okay.
are doing that.
Yeah, and it is nice that the hardship exists, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure
I think, yeah, it
it should
does.
exist.
Yes.
Great.
Because that's really the kind, it's so totally in line with the community housing idea, to keep people on this island who need the.
Even though the vote went 4-1, and we were asked to, for special consideration for this hardship, which basically wanted 4 rentals during the, we didn't limit it to 4. We went to 52 one-week rentals if you qualify, of which historically for the last several years, we've had a handful, and that's not an exaggeration, a handful of people that have applied for this hardship. But you know what? If it's kept a handful of people here, it was worth it.
Yeah.
How that person decided to vote against it after we went from 4 to 52 is beyond me, but,
And just,
Yeah.
and again, this is an anomaly. Most municipalities do not allow any rentals less than 14 days.
Correct.
So you're going above and beyond, and now you have 2 options, but you're just saying, we have such an issue with the lack of community housing that we need to bring back because that's, we got that grant, not directly, but, a grant to have people,
CDCLI.
build some ADUs and whatever. So that, and in our community housing plan, that's number 1, ADUs for community housing. So don't give a financial incentive for people not to do it.
and I wanted, for all the people that have short-term memory, wanted to remind everybody when we drafted that vacation rental law together, that we didn't demand 30-day minimum, 14-day minimum. We said 1 rental, 2-week period. So it behooved you, it was an incentive. 11 days up, 3 days down. 7 days up, 7 days down. It really forced you to get away from the weekend rental and get into the week and a half to 2-week rentals. And by the way, there was no limit on them. It was basically 26 rental opportunities throughout the year. Divide 2 into 52, it's 26 times. Obviously during the high season, but our law, compared to the other laws from Riverhead, Southhold, East Hampton, Southampton, very, very liberal in comparison to what other municipalities passed. And I want to say that, although enforcement has been somewhat a little bit of an issue here, overall, what was being claimed, and again, at the extremes, at the opposite ends, never materialized. The island didn't come to a screeching halt. The people still came out and rented properties successfully and still enjoyed it. But cooler heads prevailed because I hate to use that word, compromised. We actually compromised, which is not a dirty word anymore. It should be something that we strive to do more often.
I didn't get a chance to look at this before the meeting, so just to be clear, and because it's such a hot button issue. So if you're owner occupied, you can rent out your ADU for only year-round rentals,
Unless you're a hardship.
unless you're hardship. Okay. I just want to try,
Right.
so as I'm reading through this.
You could either rent out your ADU or your home.
Well, now I was going to say, if it's your second residence,
Well, typically, the hardship would be for the whole, it's not for the accessory apartment type.
No, but you
Right.
qualify
Yes,
yes.
because of your hardship.
correct.
And if it's not your primary residence, it's your secondary residence, you can rent that out under the commercial.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And if it's your secondary residence and you have an ADU, you can do what? What are we proposing?
Secondary, you have your commercial. I would argue that if you're owner occupied, that's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we're
That's
gonna get.
mental origami here, because if if it's not owner occupied, then it's not, and you can do whichever vacation rental, if you qualify for the homestead, you can do a vacation rental.
Presume you don't qualify.
If you qualify, homestead is your
Maybe a
second home.
Okay, so then,
Yeah, so I'm saying it's your secondary residence and you have an ADU, what are we allowing for rental here? There's the primary, the house or the ADU, or you can
The ADU has to
Airbnb both?
be year-round rental.
I would say that, yes, and then the other
Yes,
dwelling, that,
which, what he said or what I said?
what he said.
ADU has to be a year-round rental.
Okay.
And then the
Well,
main
the house
dwelling,
could be the year-round rental and the ADU.
yeah, and you can vacation rental the other
Okay,
structure.
so only one can
One,
be
yeah,
there.
if it's seasonal, one
Okay.
and one, yeah.
Okay.
And I do urge, an important part of this is what Joe Fenora had to say about water use here. That, Joe, I know you're probably still on the line listening, but I think people are misinterpreting the fact that, you know, in areas that are sensitive water needs, about water use, you know, with these ADUs versus keeping them on the rental market and having people come in larger numbers and use greater amounts of water. I think if there's any type of environmental benefit, that should be advertised.
Yeah, I do think that you get, there's a change in usage when you have a year-round tenant versus a seasonal rental, where you have different people coming in usually larger quantities, and they're not sensitive to the area. They don't understand the nature of the island. They don't know that they're not on public water. They don't know that they're on a septic system instead of a sewer. So I think that in year-round rentals, you have people with better awareness
Right.
and less water usage because they're working. They're not hanging out in the house all day. They're not going to the beach, coming back, going out to dinner, coming back, like. And you have, exactly. So like when you have short-term rentals, you have people who just kind of use and abuse the property, don't really care about the consequences to the environment because they're just there for the weekend. But when you have people who are there year-round, they understand their impact on their environment, their impact on their neighbors. And I think that they're more responsible in the way they use the property, the way they use the water. So a year-round rental of an ADU, I think, is less detrimental than a seasonal usage, rental usage. Because also, I mean, you're renting that ADU out in the high season, in the drought season,
correct.
where we're already impacted, to people who don't understand the impact that's happening. And so then you get irresponsible usage.
Definitely.
And in the summer, if you have someone who lives there year round, in the summer, they are working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs and they are barely there.
Yeah.
So I think that you kind of get a difference in usage between a year round versus a seasonal renting.
When you're preparing,
stated.
you know, that summary paragraph that you do? I mean, I know this is a change, so it's different, but I was just wondering, what what you just outlined for Amber, under, you know, if, you know, all the, if you're doing, that's like plain language.
Yeah, no, we can
You
come
know,
up with
can you
something
come
like a
in,
chart or
yeah, yeah,
We
exactly,
definitely need that, just.
right? Because I thought that
Yeah,
was
I'm,
really
like,
interesting,
glancing
but,
at this and I'm like,
yeah, how long is that gonna?
Like a basic logic puzzle.
Yeah.
Because
Again.
I know.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Going
then
back to my
diagram.
LSAT days.
Venn diagram.
But no, like this code in and of itself is slightly complicated, and then, you know, to explain it when we're taking ADUs out, makes it a little more complicated, but yeah, so we will.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because when I was reading it, I got a little confused with some of the code, especially on how the licensing works. And, you know, it is a confusing code. I mean,
Yes,
when-
but
if
just
you
so
break
know,
it down.
The only thing we're doing here is taking out one section, just striking it out. We're not adding anything other than the inspections that I think we're gonna have. Right.
And I think you made some good points there on those inspections. The average inspection, $3,500 versus having it done for free. But I hope the public understands the fact that town would be negligent by not handing out a permit without having it duly inspected. Self-checklist, there can be so many abuses with the self-checklist, honest to God. You have to, this is too serious. People can die, people can get hurt if we don't take the necessary measures. It's just a really necessary ingredient as part of the rental. You know, it's just part of doing business, I'm afraid.
And at some point, you're gonna have to revisit the fee,
Yes,
because we more administrative resources being
I think that,
expanded.
I brought that up the other
Nor the
day.
budget has to go up.
There is no question about that. It's gonna have to be looked at a little bit because $150 for 2 years, $75 a year is a joke. I mean, compared to what we're asking the building department now to do, to possibly supervise and look over and monitor 150 of these or 200 rentals here on the island or more, that doesn't really begin to cover the cost.
And again, if you look at the rental rates right now for vacation,
Yeah, yes.
you know, it's not in line with the fee.
And the other thing we're trying to do with the ADUs is, Jim, well, it's all well and good that, we compromised on the STUs and SDRs and everything worked.
Yeah.
We took a tremendous amount of year-round housing off the market,
We did.
and it hurt our housing.
Yeah, but to be honest with you,
That was already happening.
that was happening over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That was in motion beforehand. We were trying to, and by the way, we argued till we would, beyond nauseum over that it wasn't impacting. It surely did have a major impact, but it wasn't the only thing.
Right.
And COVID, did another complication with that, so.
So by taking things out of section 105, does that mean it's flipping to section 133 then, some of the governing regulations?
Well, yeah,
It's pulling from the vacation rental section, so now wouldn't it start to fall? under
Zoning
the sec-
controls.
Yeah, under.
Yes, the accessory apartments. So that's the default that it always was from this time immemorial. And when the rental code was written, it basically, there's a provision saying this trumps zoning. I don't even know if that's legal, that you could have an administrative code trump zoning. But anyway, zoning will control, and there's separate and distinct regulations and rules for an accessory apartment. And, they have inspections on that end. So that survived,
So, but that's an implication of what we're doing.
yes.
I'm just trying to, when I'm looking at this, make sure I get all the puzzle pieces.
Okay.
Okay, so we should put this back for next week.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody's got to be
I've got some.
making changes, or discuss whatever has to be done so we can set the public hearing. Okay, next on the agenda is, we had a public hearing on 149 Ram Island Drive for a special permit. We adjourned it. And we among ourselves, it's not a public hearing, so we're not going to hear from the public on it, but this is one where
This falls into
what you just,
Yeah.
the problem that I outlined. Exactly,
It's a special permit being requested after the work has already been done.
Right.
By a prior owner
right.
who had an unfinished basement.
We didn't necessarily go through the special permit process in the beginning because they skirted it by not finishing things.
Yeah.
So now what?
hey, Reed?
Yes.
You got my text?
Hey, sir.
That's fine.
You can't even get by that fast.
Should have went like this.
I just texted you, can you come over? I thought, wow.
Oh, wait.
I'm actually going to the doctor.
Well, yes,
That bronchitis.
Okay, bye. He's taking the COVID test.
They're making me do it before you go.
All right, so we're talking 149 Ram Island Drive. Just so,
He can sit at the table.
Stand over there, near Amber.
I'm not scared, I ran from all of it.
just so we understand real quick.
What time is?
I didn't catch you from.
Oh, it's time to.
Real quick, the house was sold. They didn't have a building permit. They brought everything up to code?
No. No, they still don't have a building permit. They did a bunch of work without permits
Right.
after however long ago, the original bylaw.
So, Stephen, should we even be discussing a special permit if they don't have the original building permit?
Did we let them?
No. In other words,
They're trying on that with the
yeah,
building
that
department.
shouldn't.
All right, you were gonna meet with the contractor.
Right.
Well, we have.
Okay,
So,
all right, so our issue is it became a 6,000 plus foot house
Yeah.
after the fact,
Yes.
without a permit.
Right.
The same contractor did the basement conversion right after we gave them the
Right.
C of O for the original house.
So what puts us between a rock and a hard place is if we approve this, what's going to prevent anyone from building a 6,000 plus foot house?
He has to go because that takes 15 minutes. His appointment's at
Yes.
2:30.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Nothing, and that's a legitimate.
Let's schedule him for next
yeah,
week.
let's schedule him for next
Feel
Thanks.
better.
Yes.
Run, Reed, run.
Next week.
Yeah.
So
Even the
Stephen, I mean,
antibiotics work.
that's really the issue. What do we do?
Yeah.
You know, what are the options?
I mean, he was holding up.
Well,
the-
they're gonna have to submit a building permit and pay the 5 times the building permit fee, so that's something.
That's just for the regular building permit.
Correct.
Right.
But
Then the special permit has to happen, right? Or no?
Yeah.
Well, they've already submitted that to us. That's what we're talking about. So
They had the,
But is there
this
a
is one
fine
of the
on that level?
upstairs.
No,
They wanted to do some work upstairs, so that's what they're gonna have to talk to the building department about to get the building permits. I'm looking at my notes from the meeting, so they can continue with the upstairs work, but the downstairs work
Correct.
is dependent upon this.
That is
Is that-
correct.
Have I got that right?
Yes.
It's separate.
That's, I
Absolutely.
have no idea, Reed.
Okay.
No,
That was my,
Yeah, no,
yes,
you're
that was my
correct. You're
recollection.
correct. You're
But
correct.
when you violate the special permit law, there isn't a 5 times penalty, like you got
No, no,
with the
no, no,
regular?
no, no.
There's nothing
Okay.
defined in.
We,
All right.
the way the law is, you inherit the sins of the prior owner. So arguably, we could issue a violation right now for the conversion without a special permit. So that's something that could be explored as far as a punishment for what they did. But I think you have to evaluate this irrespective of that and look at the standards and go through the standards and see if they deserve having a special permit granted. You know, you can take that into account maybe as one factor, but I would argue that you look at it in a vacuum and let that be an ancillary action that occurs. Because you might feel that if they came to you prior to it being converted, that they wouldn't have gotten it at that point, and you could deny it based on that. Or you could, if you would have approved it, you can approve it now, with maybe some other conditions or whatever. Or if the board is gonna pass a moratorium, it can be subject to that.
My feeling is, you know, had they come before us and we were gonna approve it, that's one thing. But it's after the fact now. And, you know, and you could say, you know, sins of the father, or whatever you said.
It's better to, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
Yeah. I mean, what's gonna stop it? You know, anyone with money from doing this? You know, but you'll buy a house with cash, you don't need a CO. Then after the fact,
But
We can
again,
account for that in our code.
I know.
Is that's.
correct, and the fines that our code has isn't really gonna be a deterrent.
So the fine would be rip it out.
So, exactly.
That would be.
Yeah.
That would be.
That would be the deterrent, but I can assure you that there's a lot of money being spent in aggravation on this new owner's side. That they are paying a little bit of a penalty already. And I'm sure what they're going through right now is gonna serve as a little bit of a deterrent. But you're never gonna have a deterrent when we don't have enforcement. So we need to bolster the enforcement, and we need to, you know, but that's a story for another.
What are we gonna do? That's the enforcement.
Shouldn't be wearing the hat of an enforcement official. You're the town board, you have an application in front of you, you need to go review the standards. You can't just add a whole
Okay,
clause.
so if we deny it, what happens?
They can rip it out.
Correct.
The downstairs portion.
Yeah.
Yeah, they developed the first and second floor, that's under the 5,989 square feet, right, the upstairs? Not counting the basement and the other,
Well, that was the weird thing, because looking at the plan, no.
no, that wasn't,
I mean, if I remember correctly, looking at, I have it.
It's still on space.
The math did not,
well, with the basement, it was 8,403 square feet. Without the basement, it was 6,566 square feet. The main house was 5,378 feet. without the basement being done. That's what I have. And the garage was 1,188 square feet. So if you add the garage and the main house together, it exceeds it.
Even when a contractor takes a job, is he obligated to make sure that the permits are in place?
Yes.
Typically why they're hired.
I think anytime we
No,
get one
no.
of these.
The homeowner, you know.
Yeah, but
hires it.
the homeowner usually hires the contractor because the homeowner doesn't know the rules and regulations and they anticipate that their contractor will.
Homeowner doesn't have a
So-
license, the contractor has, the contractor.
Right.
Usually.
Because there's two entities that you can employ. You can employ an expediter that's an expert in procuring permits, or you can hire a contractor that does both, prepares the permits and builds the house.
Our normal way.
Yeah,
So we've
so,
heard from the building department that contractors have come in and said, oh, they're doing so-and-so and they wanted me to do it. I said, no. So,
that's good.
so I understand that, but who's the burden on then? Is it on the homeowner or the contractor that does it?
Burden's on both.
The way I look at these numbers, if you were to eliminate the basement, and if you went to the garage and eliminated the loft, you would get below 5,999 square feet. Because the loft is 723 square feet. If you take the house on the ground floor, the garage, it's 6,566 square feet. So if you subtract 723 from that, you're down around 5,900 square feet, somewhere around there. You're below the.
I'm gonna recommend that you table this and have Reed fully prepared to come in here and.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, the numbers are still unclear. Two things though, I think anytime we get one of these and we know who the contractor was that did the work, I think we hold them in.
I totally agree.
I mean, we thought she was doing that.
We gotta start.
He comes up every year. He said, oh, I didn't know you needed it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, recently.
And by the way, Reed checked and Southampton did require a permit.
Yeah, so, I mean, absolutely, so.
Amber makes a good point, though. That's.
Yeah, no, we
that's
have to
good.
start doing that.
And then constituted contractors review board, Amber?
Constitute.
Did we reconstitute, did we appoint?
We appointed people the beginning of the year. It was you, me, building department.
You have to
But
resign,
yes, I'm not going to be on that board.
right, so somebody else.
So somebody else has to be on it.
Okay.
I'll do it till the end of the year.
All right, yeah.
And then the other thing, Stephen, you said, talking about enforcement is a topic for a different day.
Yes.
I think it's very great to schedule at some point in, like, in a work session, so we do start, because we always push it off, but then we never pick it up.
It's not anything to really,
Or pick it up as a discussion with the building department.
correct, yes. There has to be a lot of training and.
It might be an
you know.
executive session because we are talking about capabilities and we are going to be talking about expectations.
Yes, so,
Right.
yeah, what I would, yes, we should have an executive session with Reed and Michael.
Yeah.
I feel like it always gets pushed off, so let's,
No,
whatever
yeah.
it takes,
No,
whether it's
no, no.
this group or
Yeah,
a subset of us and the building department.
It gets lost.
Yeah.
It does get lost if you don't follow through. All right, so we'll have Reed Karen come in next week, right, on this one?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about the dock permit here?
Next one is 146G North Ferry Road.
yeah.
Dock permit, this was another after-the-fact job.
So we had a WMAC meeting and this was discussed among other things last night. And the sense of the WMAC was the following.
I got it.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, changing of the decking. The pilings, the reduction to the maximum of 6. And the third one was the float needed to be chalked. No CCA materials leaching into the water.
So to be a little bit more specific there, and Jim will tell me if didn't really understand them. They'll replace the decking on the portion of the dock that
Yeah.
goes over wetlands with the grading that we
Correct.
expect of all docks and
So the
walkways.
light comes through and,
Comes through and the grass can regrow down there.
Right.
okay,
So there's that. Then pilings switched out. Those pilings that are CCA lumber. And last night it was understood to be that there were 6 of them. 4 of them, and maybe more, but 4 of them at least with that are needed for the float. More may be needed because the float needs to be chalked. That's a DEC request. So at least 4 in the float, and then 2 more at the very end of the dock appeared to be below the high water mark. So the thought here is, Al Laredo said last night that, yes, there is a disturbance now. We're going to have to take these out, put locust posts in, and that's an environmental problem. But the other side of that is the CCA would stay and leach on a longer term.
And the
So,
original dock had to have all. That was the
Right.
stipulation.
right, that was,
CCA lumber.
right. And it's not that CCA is never allowed now, but this is specific, especially sensitive within a creek.
Yeah.
So there's that. However, James Eklund just wrote to the committee, and he went to the Foyer House this afternoon at high tide. Granted, it's an astronomical high tide because of the full moon. And that being said, he sees at least 10 to 12 piles that are in the water at a high tide. So that would be 10 to 12. And I have emailed.
All have to be seated? I mean,
They should all be locust posts.
yeah.
You know, I have a similar catwalk on the same creek, and I was told it had to be locust posts too. I mean, this isn't an unusual thing. And then chalk the float. So I just, while we were sitting here and I received this email, the committee, and asked them if this new information that we've just received is something that they would like to reconsider. Because it is new information that we didn't have before last night's meeting. So I would say we need to just talk about this again next week.
Yeah.
Give them a chance to respond.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, these high tides that we're having that seem abnormal are becoming more common. I mean, because a few days ago, you couldn't get on and off North Ferry or South Ferry without driving through a foot of water.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just becoming a more common occurrence, it feels like. I mean, granted, it's a full moon, but this is now the new full moon tide. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but, you know,
Miami, the king tide, they're saying
Yeah.
they have street flooding just in a normal high tide now. It's right.
yeah,
Yep.
And there's no.
exactly.
Ask a question, since this is still an open public hearing, like what are we allowed to do during work sessions and what do we have to wait to do back in public hearing, like when we reopen the public hearing?
Well, you can talk about the application and everything that's been submitted thus far. But
Just can't take public input.
yes, nobody who's in Zoom world right now is not able to talk or comment on anything we've just talked about. And has to be they have to wait for the public hearing.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand the process and
Yeah.
the public understands.
Yep, what about the wetlands application? Has that been submitted yet?
For this,
Okay, and again, I would argue in this particular case, and actually in all cases, that you wait for that as well, because that should be submitted, because it is part and parcel of this dock. Like, you have a dock to nowhere if you just approve the dock without the walkway to it. And the walkway
It's extensive.
is massive. So I
And
would,
they-
Pre-existing or just?
No, she said that they had to build it because they're older people that could slip in the
Yes, that's that
grass.
weather.
And
Correct.
Rob Herman, or I should say Rob Herman, I should say, and consultants, that's what was said at the public hearing by the owner, has been hired, so that's, I would imagine it's something that's going to happen, but you think we should just wait?
I think that you should utilize concurrent review, and, because there's some information that can come out there that would maybe you'd be taken into account. Because now, again, we're giving it to the planning board, so it's now not going to be both in front of you. So I think that application should be submitted, public hearing should open, and some information should be vetted there, because I don't like when you're handcuffing another board Like,
Right.
not technically they could deny it, but if the dock was already approved, they feel more compelled to approve it. So I'm just, and I think, again, opening a public hearing with another board, another presentation, more information could come up that may be useful in your determination here.
To go back to Amber's point earlier, it's a contractor that didn't have a permit. Separate issue, but
Yeah.
Didn't we just recently approve 2 dock applications without the wetlands? So we did them like Tim Thompson did that.
They did wetlands though.
Yeah, I mean, but I
We
mean,
made them separated and,
and
Yeah.
we'll have one to proceed.
Right.
So
We,
coming up with a new policy.
I think
Not
I-
gonna do that.
yeah, I think it needs to be a new policy. I think it's helpful to see the when you're reviewing it. And if you break it into the 2 applications, I would almost like to see an application that combines them, but that would be creating a whole new thing. But I do think if we review them simultaneously, then you get the full picture of what's happening and it's easier to see, the pros and cons of it. I think what's happened recently is that we've had abnormal applications. We don't typically get long ramps with the dock. It's typically a dock that ends at the
Right.
beach and that's all she
Yeah.
wrote. Or it leads to stairs that already exist and it's just we're fixing this dock. And I think we're starting to see another trend of a new way of
Well,
doing these.
yeah, and so-
And it does kind of require both applications because that walkway it's not a dock. It doesn't meet the dock criteria, but it is in your wetlands in the regulated area and it does require wetlands. And, they do go together, but they are kind of separate entities, but the review needs to be, I think, current, like Steve.
let me also say that this does go back to a WMAC sort of mantra, which is all the easy docks are done.
Right.
All the all the gimmies are gone.
yeah.
And every dock now, from now here on in, is, so what you just said about more interference with the wetlands is something that is an expectation, I think. So yes, to freshen up the policy to address this sort of brave new world we're facing.
And like in other municipalities, I'll give you an example. In Southwold, there was a special exception application pending in front of the zoning board. And also site plan application in front of the planning board. The planning board reviewed the application and made a recommendation to the zoning board. So there's this intra, whatever the word is, board cooperation that gives you the best result. And I think, again, even if we haven't done it in the past, I'd highly recommend we do it in the future, that we should sort of time them together on companion tracks, just so, again, you have the full picture and it's not done in a piecemeal way.
It's also, I think, more fair to the applicant because then they know that, if you apply for the dock gets approved, but then you apply for this ramp, maybe the ramp gets denied and then you have a dock to nowhere. I mean, it just makes more sense, or your ramp gets approved and your dock gets denied for some reason. I don't know, but it makes more sense.
Is that a town
in that way.
coordination? Who coordinates what you just said? How does that, it can't just happen, it has to be.
Not necessarily the code, it should happen at the building department. The building, like, I would argue that the building department should be the central repository for all land use applications. I would say it goes there and then they're the gatekeeper and they say you need X, Y, and Z. So when they get the application, okay, you're gonna need wetlands and you're gonna need a dock. And then they know, and then they'll track that way. I want one gatekeeper.
Well, we don't have that now, though, do we? Because you're the gatekeeper for, aren't you, for?
Applications.
The docks, they come directly to you and not to the
Me,
building department.
and then it gets distributed to the town board, WMAC, once the dock is
There
built.
should be one
The
central.
building department inspects it to make sure it's up to code and to the plan.
I think we should talk about this
Yeah,
and have everything go to the building department and then he send it out, or they send it out. Just so, again, things like this.
we need increased fees again.
I'm telling you, the building department's being overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think what we need to
That's
do-
a problem.
Amber and I had this discussion this morning with the seniors, do an organizational chart for them. I think we have to do a lot of Mike Bebon had given us a across the board.
Meg's the best at organization.
I was telling Christina earlier, we need to redo the organizational chart for the town for the comp plan. So let's do this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And we should do it for each
Yes.
each department.
You did it for Foil. kind of is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Same thing, like this is where.
That's what we need to do, but we need to do it for everybody. We need to know the exact spider web of how this works.
But it was like very generic for all
It's-
now. Now we
yeah.
need to really.
And we need to do it without names. Had the, like,
Right.
the comp plan, it had all the names
Yeah.
listed, but we need to know all the
Positions.
positions, how they work,
Yeah.
and then maybe even within that department, then how does that department work? It might have to, like, span a whole table, but we'll see.
Oh, I can see you're
You
getting.
know I'm really excited.
I was gonna say, it's like me and spreadsheets.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
You two should get together.
Organization will happen.
Serial killer who has that thing.
Yeah, strings everywhere.
Okay, so we're gonna.
So what are we doing?
There you go, that's better.
We're gonna yes.
All right, so WMAC is gonna revisit that,
Great, Man-Waring Road, we closed that hearing.
right?
Discuss that. In 104 South.
Are there,
Also.
are there conditions, like, for the resolution? Do we want to talk about that? I mean, I didn't, it seemed pretty
Wearing
straightforward.
was pretty vanilla.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that
Yeah.
was straightforward.
Right, I just want to,
That was the big beautiful tree, right?
no,
No.
that's,
No, the person doing Man-Waring is.
Yeah, Van Waring's Johnson.
That was,
I'm sorry, you're going, okay.
for,
the only thing we have was an
Right.
electrical line there.
that was very straightforward. I don't think it even needed any, it didn't have any requirements or recommendations by any of the committees, so. Yeah, no, I think it is closed. It didn't have it.
But, yeah, I was gonna say. but
Yeah, that was
there's just- I mean, is there anything, and Stephen's left the room for the resolution? You got it? Okay, good, Christine.
Yeah, so there was no, yeah, nothing for this one. Yeah, and 104 South Ferry was the big tree.
Yeah, the one that is kind of the fourth oldest one in the world.
Right,
So that's
yeah.
quoted, right?
I guess so, between men wearing, we don't have any.
We don't, yeah, we don't have any requirements or special conditions.
So then, that's a plain vanilla.
Okay, vanilla resolution, yeah. The vanilla is delicious. I don't know why everyone considers it plain.
Sorry.
Okay,
And then Bucci was the tree.
yeah. We're just waiting to see if there's any other.
Any conditions?
Christina, you have any notes on that?
I want to go look at that tree.
I can tell.
It's.
Been waiting for it to bloom.
Again,
We pulled a wild black cherry down. No, we didn't. Our neighbors did as we were redoing our house. And our son took the wood. He was in a wood program at the time. Anyway, and made a bathroom. It is the most, the cabinet out of it.
Wow.
It is the most beautiful wood, that wild black cherry. Oh my gosh, really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Make a lot of furniture out of that.
yeah, I don't think there were any real,
This is the man-made.
it's the man-made pond that's supposed to be used
Yeah.
for fire
For
support.
the access for, yeah.
Yep, But
I don't think there's.
if there's a swimming pool, they'll probably use that instead. I don't,
Good point, yeah. And there's mostly not water.
right, and it's not a DEC regulated, it's just, so, I mean,
About the South Ferry Road wetlands permit,
planning board didn't have any
or the big tree, I don't think.
requirements.
And it's wetlands. because-
Yeah, just the automatic pool cover,
So
but,
it's not even like.
This man-made ponds counted.
I know, neither do I. Yeah, it's not a natural.
Okay, so we're good with that one?
yeah, they already have the vegetative plan on here, so I don't think there's anything that,
30 in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
that's fine, okay.
can act on that next.
Two easy ones, two hard ones.
Okay, next we'll go to board member reports. Hey, you want to start us off?
EJ and I are gonna be meeting with the comp plan consultants and discussing our plan moving forward. And we're doing that on Wednesday, the 15th. So that's good, because we'll be able to get in touch with the CPAC after that and the general public and let them know what our timeline is and how things are gonna evolve.
How many of Zoom?
It's Zoom, but they will come for a meeting with the public and kind of just to introduce themselves and
Yeah.
do all that fun stuff. Other than that, I don't think I've had a meeting. Last WQI was canceled, and that's not even my committee. So, yeah,
Good.
that's it. That's all I got.
Jim?
Yeah, three quickies. The highway department, kudos to the highway department after the storm, right on it the next morning, cleared off all the roads with all the debris. And there was a lot of debris with the flooding. They did a great job getting out there and taking care of that cleanup. So thank you very, very much for your quick response. WMAC met last night, and DJ and I were both present for that. We had the addition of Tom Field, who I want to say very successfully represented himself last night. I thought he did a nice job. I think BJ and I talked afterwards. I think he's going to be a real good fit for the WMAC. Matthew Williamson, of course, was not notified till later, so he will be at the next meeting. He had already had a conflict there. Bo's report, the only thing I wanted to say about Bo's report is very interesting. The patrols, you often ask how many times do they stop and interact with boat owners, and he gave the numbers. 2017, 190 times. 2018, 248 times. This past year, in 2022, 264 times. So it was the largest number. And the major reasons, he put it into 5 categories. The number one probably being failure to display registration or validation stickers, and children under 12 years of age without PFDs continue to be the leading cause of reasons why they stop vessels. Second one out there are vessels out of the anchorage areas, which we've talked about before, which, is very common down at Shell Beach where you see vessels outside of the anchorage area. Number 3, for higher water sports and charter boats, there's much more visibility of these kinds of crafts out on the water today, which is continuing to increase and maybe become an issue. Number 4, general vessel size continues to increase. And anybody that's been around here for an extended period of time actually understand that we have some biggies out there, and they seem to be getting bigger. The trend is up, not smaller. And the 5th one was planned enforcement details, different things that they're checking for. But he's also talked about, he gave a report on moorings, gave a report on Condon Dock, the main concern about the T at the end of the police boat, and using it as a 2-hour max. So we talked a little bit about that. Emergency service dock at Volunteer Park. He talked a little bit about that. Talked a little bit about boat storage. Over 300 permits issued for boat storage. Over 300 permits.
Jim?
He made note that the compliance is high with the new, the kayak, all that, which is great. That's really cleaned it up.
Let me ask you this, would it be, now we call him the harbor master, his job, let's say, because Jim's saying the boats are getting bigger, that you had a 30-foot boat, now you bought a 40-foot boat and put on the same mooring, which
His job,
he's supposed to, yeah?
yeah, it
So
is.
he-
They're supposed to notify us that they changed.
Yeah, but if they don't.
If they don't,
No, they change.
They don't.
He should be, this is one of the reasons why Bo and the rest of the Marine Force should become the online mooring mavens, because they need to have their iPads with them.
Yeah.
And, on doing these random checks
Okay.
throughout the year that what, and if, and we've talked about this too, at the WMAC, which is not to become this, overreaching, militarized police department. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, if you're not going to be on your mooring, you're going away for a couple of weeks, but you have a buddy who's, you call Amber, you call the town clerk, or you call the police department and say, this other boat is going to be on my mooring. The size is adequate, the scope is adequate. I mean, it can be handled that way. It's how other harbors handle things like that. Let me add, though, to what Jim said about Bo's report, and that it's in there, a concentrated effort to improve the town use of online moorings and to improve the waitlist administration. These are all things he's working on, the implementation of the new fees and new term.
By the way, just
Very
it
busy.
showed last night. I mean, he's out there in the dead of winter.
Yeah.
I mean, he's out there actually making adjustments as we speak.
Yeah.
On nice days, he goes out there.
Right.
And he's done a lot of work on this, area by area.
Right. One thing one topic on this that Bill Garrity was interested in, and it's a worthy thing to keep at the front. The question was, Bo, did you do you and the rest, do any boardings this summer to inspect for the discharge valves? Going into the holding tank, not going into the bay. And he said no. And admittedly so, that that there is every right, you have every right as the law enforcement to do that without warning or without a paper or a warrant or any of that. And he said that, that he fully thinks that will change, that gradually will be added to their duty list. But he did 200 to 300, of these interactions.
Right.
And he said he does, he hands out the pamphlet, on safe,
That's
on
important.
boating and all of that.
Yeah.
That includes, what's a responsible boater doing.
Right.
Oh, and also at the WMSC last night, I'm just gonna add.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of thanking of George Singer's
Yes.
service.
Yes,
For
yes.
all those many
Right,
years. And as George sat poolside under a palm tree. Like, with a tan like Hamilton, that actor. So a little bit of sadness, but I think also a little bit of jealousy going on there.
BJ, is there any discussion ever, when you said there were a lot of the things putting the people back into the Anchorage area,
Yeah.
with the rafting? Is that,
We had one little, so the Pridwin applied for
no,
the.
the rafting in the Anchorage area?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did no,
I mean, in general, that's not an
No.
issue, really?
no, it's funny, it
Every
hasn't
once in a
really
while,
come up.
somebody brings it up that, they're not supposed to do that, but it's an Anchorage area. It's not-
I'm not sure, are they not supposed to, I thought you wanted
Moorings,
some
they can't-
moorings, I think it's moorings.
It's on moorings, yeah, it's not
Right,
in
so,
Anchorage. That's a given down at Shell Beach.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, and out at Coppers Harbor. But we were saying also with the Pridwin moorings, that should that, ever get approved, a few moorings that the Pridwin is asking for, that rafting should be in the, it should be reiterated that rafting is prohibited at moorings. Because you could see them getting busy on the Wednesday night barbecues that they plan on reinstating, which everybody was quite excited about. I don't know, do we,
I gave them a quick overview of what the CEC initiatives were, because they're always involved with, obviously, with clean water. So the investment the town is making with WQI money. I also mentioned the fact what the PEP is doing with $600,000 over the next 2 years in West Neck, in Manatee, and Dickinson Creeks. I also went over a little bit of the use of the pesticides, which we covered at today's meeting, because Tommy was there, and Tommy has brought that up constantly. I wanted Tommy to know that we're actually working on that. The Mintz application went through 5-0 for mooring. Quinlan application for a mooring went through 5-0. The Weinstein Hensley dock was approved 5-0 with one stipulation that Jack Costello is not present. He does represent the client here, with a requirement that the pulling in the piling so that there was a maximum of 50 feet width. That was what they were talking about. Right now, it exceeds that. So with that minor modification, they would approve that with that one stipulation. The bocce mooring thing that Bo visited, he provided that with new coordinates. So that was not a problem. That was under old business. That was a question of just getting the better coordinates for that particular mooring. That passed 5-0. The Fura, what we just talked about, lots of issues there. So we spent quite a lot of time looking at that particular application, and people were not pleased for a variety of reasons, as BJ just cited. The last thing I'll close with, we did open up the meeting, spending quite a bit of time on with Greg Petrie was there, so was Rob Coburn. He was there. The initial ask was for 8 commercial moorings. I think by the end of the night, after that discussion piece, they were looking more for four moorings as opposed to 8, maybe 4 or 5. The Bo came up, I forgot who gave the recommendation, is to reconfigure the mooring field based on what the total need might be, and then what you were asking for initially. The big plea from the 2 of them that were there was, the waters are so rough now there that with these large boats going by, the wakes that are being created, people will not tie up at, they have 2 docks down there, they will not tie up at the docks, because the wakes just batter the boats up against the docks. And that was the main problem of the how rough the water was there. So they felt that the moorings would help. Again, I know what your comments were to me, before the start
Yeah,
of the
I
meeting.
might as well bring that up.
Yeah.
Stephen, is this even a discussion we should be having? It's pre-existing non-conforming business. This would definitely be an increase in the use,
An expansion of the
expansion.
performance.
I mean,
Yeah.
we just went through 2 years of it on the other side of the island.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, there's that, yeah, but given that you would have a public hearing and the public, theoretically, the neighbors, could come and say yay, nay,
Yeah.
Wouldn't the process be worth going through to just see if
I think,
if the growth would bother anybody, because is there growth? If you're taking the boat traffic from the docks that occurred historically, which we all know it did,
right.
but now can't because things have changed, and you move that boat traffic, almost the same numbers really, to
Yes.
moorings, are you expanding? I wrestle with this question all the time.
Well, I mean, I guess the question is adding moorings to a location that never historically had them an expansion? Is that an expansion of their
In and of itself,
use,
yeah.
that in and of itself?
It was difficult because it was on the agenda, the two gentlemen came, it would be wrong for us to not even entertain the discussion last night, I thought. It was very informative, people showed a lot of flexibility there. Again, if you're not permitting it at all, that has to be known up front. But the discussion was fruitful. There is, in front of their pool on the right-hand side of the property looking out, there are 3 or 4 large rocks that are sit right there at the water level. There's a lot of traffic that comes through there. When they rent the boards, the paddleboard, they parallel a lot in front of the music Perlman's, up and down, up to that rock and then back down again. I'm not using this as an excuse, but they were saying this could be, by putting the moorings there, it's creating a natural buffer to keep the larger boats further out a little bit and protecting, again, it's a reach.
Yeah.
But it's a consideration, and also staying far enough away from the camp on the western side of the property so that the campers that were sailing that come out, that wouldn't interfere with the sailing situation there whatsoever too. So we looked at a number of factors, It was a fairly lengthy discussion, it probably went on for about 40 minutes. This meeting went over 2 hours, it went 2 hours and 10 minutes. So there was a lot of discussion.
the only way that you'd be able to know whether or not it's an expansion is if the applicant asked for an interpretation from the zoning board or submitted a special permit application. So
I want an interpretation. To me, this is be selective enforcement,
yeah, no. I think, either the applicant can ask for it, and I gotta check the code, but I think you as a town board could even ask for it directly to the zoning board. So, yeah, because it's conjecture at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me is, with all the changes at the Pridwin, that we haven't, that's a little bit of expansion over the last couple of years with the renovation and the, addition of a spa. And again, it's
Addition of 4 cabins.
it's something I wrestle with, which is what is expansion?
And did they get approval, or they, for the, convention
An
center?
an event room, so I think it was approved.
No, it was never put in.
It wasn't put in, it's phase 2, but not
No, they didn't.
approved.
They didn't.
No, I never put it in.
No.
I don't think the plan is to put it in. I think they've spent $50.5 million with the renovation of the existing. And they put a lot of stuff in the ground. Environmentally, they really took, and safety-wise and
I'd recommend,
fire-wise.
I'd recommend that they speak to Reed
Okay,
and have him, as far as this expansion goes. Actually, I'll meet with Reed and the applicant if someone wants to reach out to him, we'll start from there.
okay. Now, I would like to have that conversation sooner rather than later, because I'd hate to spend a lot of time on this, only to tell them we're not entertaining it.
Yeah.
Well, did anyone bring up the question of, is it safe? If the water is so rough and the wakes are so large, is it a safety issue to have people transferring from a boat on a mooring to I'm assuming a shuttle.
On a mooring and on a dock.
Yeah, from a boat on a
question.
mooring to a shuttle and then to the dock if you have rough seas like this. And I've been through there on a Saturday when it's
It's crazy.
ridiculous. In a small boat traveling, I mean, you're like crawling and just trying to maneuver like you're on Mogul. So, you know, I'm wondering if that was considered in this review because I feel like that could be really dangerous.
So the conversation lacked a certain probingness. It did. But on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was safer than. I mean, that was the sort of general approach
was the
to the
thing.
topic. It is safer than, you know,
And does that come back to the question, well, is this even an appropriate location?
yeah.
Right.
Because if you're having this kind of water action, then is it even an appropriate, I mean, maybe it's always been there, but situation may have changed. Is it appropriate? Is it safe? That's kind of my question.
The other thing that you could be suspect a little bit about is the size of the boats that are coming there. So larger boats maybe don't all fit at the dock the way smaller boats used to. And therefore, putting them out on a mooring, you're bringing people in. Again, it's kind of a little bit of the same argument about filling up the rest. You know, these are, again, we talked about sleeping. It couldn't involve sleeping overnight or anything else like that. But I kind of read kind of a similar
He said 30.
comparison to, people are changing. People are coming to these establishments via boats. And it's part of our business, again, I don't want to, we all know it. But it's a side of it.
All things to think
All
about.
right, so with that aside, I think I'm glad we brought it up because I'd like
Next
to jump on
steps
that.
again?
Next steps,
They should
Yeah.
set up a meeting with Reed and myself
Karen.
to discuss.
and Stephen. Yeah, to find out whether it's an expansion of use. Yeah, that's something that, that should happen ASAP, as soon as it can. I'd like to quickly do the grants meeting this morning. It won't take me long. I've got the minutes on it.
I sit in.
If everybody's finished with that, all right, can I go? All right. Real Point, over the last week, I contacted Nick Lalota's office. I left a message with them about pursuing the monies available for the study out at Real Point with the Army Corps. Haven't heard anything back as of yet. West Neck Water, Joe Fenora said, any updates from on Suffolk County Water? Again, any word on possible financial assistance for this project? And again, we're waiting for, some decisions on that. Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation, wastewater treatment plant. At Bridge Street, we have a game plan, I think, that we've established there. I think Joe added very important points. The most important point that he added this morning was flow rates and future growth on Bridge Street, that has to be factored in. Joe, I don't think Joe has in his possession a study that was done, some 12, 13 years ago. He feels that a lot of that information hasn't changed dramatically, and that to update that study may not take a lot of resources. However, future flow rates are something that need to be considered. So that will be brought up in our discussion. I'm hoping that we can meet with them sooner rather than later. Municipal wastewater project, Joe has been keeping Dr. Dolja informed on a weekly basis through email and phone calls, trying to get the word to him, trying to keep him abreast. I think the school is looking at probably mid-April as a final time where, either we sink or swim with them. They need to know by mid-April. So we have, about 4 weeks or so to 5 weeks to play with that. Hopefully we get some good news on that. Fresh Pond is up and running. The Water Quality Improvement, WQI, appropriated $147,600 for the estimated cost for engineering and permitting at Fresh Pond. And we approved that, at the 28th day of February, 2023. The town board approved that. ADA compliance at Justice Hall and Police Headquarters. Jim provided us with some modest design modifications on the building. I was very impressed with the look of the thing. No, Amber? just that outside look of the buildings.
Oh, yeah.
These are two, people that complain about the look of 114. Building really is nicely done, very, very nicely done.
I'm sorry, what building are you talking about?
We're talking about police headquarters.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
88.
Oh, yeah.
So I did ask him the question about the flagpole budget, the reason why the flag hasn't been.
Yeah, it
put up.
needs to be
It needs to be,
reinforced.
yeah, reinforced.
Right.
So I just would like that out there because it seems to be why
Yeah.
do we spend so much money on putting up a flagpole with no flag? But there's a reason for that. The feeling was safety, so we're gonna take care of the bottom of that and make sure it's secure before we put a flag on it. Then we've talked about capital planning reports. Amber filled us in, department heads haven't, until April 1st to get back. She's having a meeting on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day next week, with department heads, right, to go over.
It's, the department head meeting on the 17th is for, to meet with Lamb and Barnowski.
Oh,
Training and seminar.
It's,
Oh, it's
yeah,
a
the
training seminar. But you'll remind them,
Mention.
you'll
Yes,
remind them
yes.
that. So they'll have 2 weeks from that time, the due date to get that stuff in. Amber mentioned that we have $235,000 in this year's town budget to support capital improvements. It needs to be help gathering all requests in order to prioritize them. Health and safety, obviously, are major factors in the criteria when we do prioritize and rank order all these requests. But I'm sure we're going to get quite a few of them. And obviously, it's going to be probably a 5-year, 10-year commitment. Realistically, if we get a lot of stuff, we're not going to be able to do it all in 5 years, but it will be prioritized. We need to develop criteria to make sure that we have the proper criteria in order to recommend them to the town board. And obviously, you will approve that, and not the committee. We also gave you updates on the Shelter Island Community Center across the way. I'm sorry to report that Ron's father passed away. So he has been upstate taking care of his father's arrangements. That's Ron Anderson. And obviously, he's a key person in that project. It can't happen without his presence there. He's due back at the end of the week and the beginning of next week. The forecast there is that everything will be done on the front of that building in a timely fashion over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. The ramp, the overhang, everything will be done except for the doors. Doors will, once the doors are negotiated with the head building, we get the right doors, then they'll be replaced. Condon Dock, we reported that Brian called me this morning before he left and Brian had a medical emergency within his family before going to the doctor, that he went down there with Al Loretto, and we talked about, he said that the bulkhead has to be raised more than what we had in the original application. My point, and I think Joe agreed with that, was that the bulkhead alone, even if you raised it 5 feet, the water comes in around it.
Yeah.
You'd have to bulkhead the whole end.
Yeah.
It's gonna flood, so, but, anything you could do, mostly, I think Joe used the term 18 inches or less. They pretty much rubber stamp that, that's it. Volunteer Park, when we put in the bulkhead there, I think we raised it 16 or 18 inches, and that we got a clear go
To
on
go to
that.
Meg's point that this is, the high tides are the norm now.
Right.
They lost a lot of planks this last weekend over there.
Yes.
at Concord Creek.
Yeah. New York Avenue, I filled everybody in on that. That's a work in progress. Stella's just got most of the approval that she needed. The last thing I think up there is on the wetlands permits, if it's needed there. Joe and Brian are looking at the south end to address the slope. It won't be ADA compliant, but it would be a safe way for people to not have to be up on New York Avenue and walk from the four-way stop at the south end of New York Avenue into town. It'll be a safe way for people to negotiate that. Jennifer's report, again, she's a blessing. Household waste application deadline was met. $12,528 is going to be recovered by the town. Amber mentioned that we should be seeking town board resolution there, right, Amber?
Yep.
For that?
Yep, I got the resolution, so that'll be on the next meeting.
Okay, and the second thing was the Shelter Island Municipal Wastewater Project. Need for letters of support. That we might, if we do seek some federal funding for that. We also have to think about, possibility of a plan B if the funding doesn't come through for that particular project. Ferry terminals, Joe has stated, it's a work in progress. It's a great partnership between the town and the ferry companies. As people that go to the ferries consistently see, work is being done on the ramps. Once the ramps are adjusted to service cars and trucks and buses and ambulances, most of all, for these real high tide situations, we'll then address the plazas and trying to raise the plazas. The MOUs are a work in progress, but everything is going well. That meeting went about 49 minutes. It was adjourned at 9:51. It was a good meeting, got a lot accomplished. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Jim. Amber?
I'm thinking Jim covered everything I was going to bring up about the resolution, so you know about that. And then just to highlight for the town board that we do have the department head training on Friday, March 17th at 10 a.m. full day, Alyssa Zuckerman. And it's going to be covering the new evaluation procedures we talked about, as well as timekeeping, handling personnel issues, harassment, discrimination. So I was thinking I was going to go. So put it out there for anyone else who wants to attend.
BJ?
Sounds good.
No, I won't be attending. No, I'm good. I think Jim covered most of WMAC and,
Joe, can we poke the health department DEC meeting with the wastewater treatment system, and can we get a date for that?
He has a date, I think.
You have a date?
Yes,
That'd
it's
be
today.
exciting. It's today?
Yeah, they're meeting today to square away those jurisdictional issues, so we can
Ah,
follow up
okay.
tomorrow.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay, last Friday, I had a meeting in Patchogue with the 10 Suffolk County supervisors and the governor. She tried to sell her housing plan and didn't go over very well. So we're gonna still get together, send her a letter. Ed Romaine put a very good, I don't know if it was a letter or editorial in the paper yesterday, addressing it. Stephen, you have anything?
No, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Good. Okay, anybody in the audience have anything for us?
I do.
Stella. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. Joe, you want to start?
Pardon?
Did you want to speak?
You're here.
Well, I'm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So like,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
private.
We'll do that after this.
Hey, Stella?
Hi, everyone. Just a few clarifying questions on some of the agenda items. With respect to the ADUs and the changes there, is that all ADUs, including sleeping quarters, accessory sleeping quarters?
No.
Okay, so,
It doesn't apply to those.
okay, thanks, Stephen. And also, does it include ADUs that are in the near shore overlay district?
Yeah, so again, it's only, what we're changing is we're proposing not to allow vacation rentals to be made out of accessory apartments. That's all we're changing. That's the only thing in the code that's changing.
All right, thank you. And
Yeah.
one other question with respect to the size of the houses of special permits. I heard everyone was talking about not wanting to be the Hamptons, the water conservation, the need for more community housing, that we need people in the schools and we need volunteers. So the question is, our code kind of talks about a restriction on you can't be smaller than X square feet, but would we consider, rather than putting in these limitations and the mitigators, putting a maximum of square footage period at the end?
That is something, once again, that's going to be addressed in the comprehensive plan update. But, and in that process, there'll be public hearings, so for you to raise that issue and then it get into the public record and vetted by the consultants and the town board.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. And Jim, please call me.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll set up that meeting.
Okay. I didn't say something wrong, did I?
Oh, no, to set up the meeting.
Okay, yes, I would love to get that going again, so yes. If you and Joe, any time that's good for the two of you, I'll make sure that I'm there.
Okay, to set that up. Anybody else in the audience?
I have a quick question for Stephen. You mentioned the moratorium and it sounded like a pretty quick process, but I've been covering the Greenport moratorium application that's been going on since the beginning of December, and it still isn't decided by Suffolk County Planning. Is there any reason this would not have to go to Suffolk County Planning?
Oh, no, it absolutely would. My point was that more than likely, they're gonna deem this a matter of local determination. So it's not, like, I don't know what their backlog is and how long it's gonna get them to get back to us, but as far as, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Okay, they've been pretty hard on Greenport and they don't like the fact that the village put in an administrative moratorium in December. So they basically have stopped taking new applications since then, I can tell you.
Yeah, no, and this.
I know, yeah, I know the village can override the county by a supermajority, as I'm sure your board could too.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think, this one's very different in my mind from what's going on in Greenport.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion. We go into executive session. Right, to discuss employment history of an employee. Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moved. Thanks, everybody.